Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today's episode is called Broke Billionaires Pretending to Still Be Rich. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, follow, and comment on the show. Also, I'd like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself or as a gift for someone you love. Now, let's get started. There's a strange phenomena out there that seems to be getting more and more common. We're seeing more and more broke billionaires pretending to still be rich. We'll tell you how they're doing it, we'll tell you why they're doing it, and we'll tell you how you can avoid being swindled by one of them. First, let's start out with why this phenomena is growing so common. The answer is debt. The amount of debt people have taken on in the last year has exploded and it continues to grow. We're not just talking about the poor and the middle class paying for groceries and utilities with their credit cards. We're also talking about the super wealthy who are taking on mountains of new debt to try and make payments on their old debt. The problem for the wealthy is that a lot of the assets they own are now dropping in value at a tremendous rate. Back in the day, before recent events, if you were ultra rich or you were what they used to call too rich to fail, you could just extend your line of credit at the bank or sell some of your assets to raise the cash you needed to pay something off. But that's a lot more problematic now than it used to be. First of all, lots of the assets that the super rich own are getting very difficult to sell at any price. If you own an expensive home or a condo or an apartment in any of the major cities, and you suddenly decide you need to unload it to raise money, then you're in for the shock of a lifetime. Why? Because that apartment or condo that you bought in Manhattan 3 years ago for $8 million may have already decreased in value by 50%. And trying to sell it at $4 million today doesn't guarantee that anybody will buy it. Even worse, people may not even respond to your ad to inquire. Why is that? Because the real estate prices on high-end property are in free fall. Everyone knows that if your condo lost half its value as of today, then it might lose another million or two in value over the next year or so. So what's the rush? Why would they make an offer today when they can just sit back and rent a unit for the next year and watch you take the hit on your property rather than them? And if you decide to go to the bank and borrow a couple $1 million against that $8 million condo, then the bank will do an appraisal and they'll quickly determine that A, it's only worth 4 million, and B, you're officially underwater on that condo, which means you owe more on it than it's worth. And that means they're not going to lend you a dime. What about all the companies the rich own? Can't they just borrow more money against those companies and continue to finance their existence until things turn around? Well, in many shocking cases now, the answer to that is no. The reason for that is that a lot of these companies, some of them billion-dollar companies, have stopped generating positive cash flow, or for many of them, they've completely stopped generating any revenue, any cash flow at all. That's a huge problem because the value of these companies is often determined by how much cash or revenue they can generate. If you've seen all the boarded up stores and malls across the country, then I'm sure you're noticing how much money these businesses are losing. Today, a major motion picture chain just announced that you can now rent out an entire movie theater for yourself for just $99. That's really funny given how empty most of these theaters are now. Nobody's going to the theaters anymore. I don't know why anybody would want to rent out an entire theater for 99 bucks when you could just walk into the theater for the price of 2 tickets and still have the place all to yourself. But this shows you how desperate these companies are now, and that means that people that own many of these companies are losing far more money than they ever imagined possible. So, what do you do if you're rich on Monday and then on Tuesday your accountant tells you that you're broke and that some of your assets are worth almost nothing? What do you do about that? Well, the first thing these broke billionaires decide to do is to make sure that nobody really knows how broke they really are. So they keep pretending to be rich. That's really important because they're afraid their spouse will bail on them if the spouse finds out all the money's gone. They're afraid the banks will completely stop helping them with credit if the banks find out how really bad the big picture is with all of their other assets. There's another really big threat, and it's the one posed to them by their vendors. A lot of the companies owned by these wealthy billionaires receive their stock or product inventory from vendors who stock their shelves with whatever they sell. In the past, when these companies were making tons of money, they would force their vendors to wait 30, 90, or even 120 days to get paid for the products the vendors put on their shelves, but that's changed. I remember years ago, some of the big car companies were making some of their vendors and suppliers wait 12 months to get paid for the things they provided. If any of them complained, the car companies would simply tell them to take their business elsewhere because they knew they couldn't sell those supplies to anyone else. And then what did some of these car companies do? Some of them filed for bankruptcy and stuck these vendors for the bills. But things are different now. Now, all the vendors who see how bad it is for the companies they service, and they're not about to get abused by long payment delays any longer. That's why the rich are scared to death of some of the vendors finding out how bad off they really are. They know the minute these vendors see how bad your financial situation is, they will start demanding payment upfront for the inventory and supplies they send you. And if you don't pay them in advance, they won't ship to you. Of course, very few people will have a strong enough balance sheet to pay vendors ahead of time. So that means closing the doors on their business. Every company owner knows that once you close your doors, your company loses most of its value. So it's really important for broke billionaires to maintain the illusion that they're still loaded. How do they do that, you ask? Well, they start selling their homes and then renting those same homes back from the people they sold them to, so they don't have to be seen moving out. Next, they sell their planes and their cars and start leasing them instead of owning them. The next thing they will do is they will start pressuring some of their long-time friends or relatives to loan them money. They'll call it a bridge loan, saying they only need the money for a few months. But in many cases, that's a lie, as they know their company will never recover. Years ago, there was a wealthy guy in the Midwest who befriended a major hockey player for 12 years. For the entire time, he would always invite him to his parties, gatherings, private plane flights to his out of state estates. He would invite this hockey player and his wife to his giant house horse racing farm in the deep south, to his estate in Hawaii. Everything was always paid for because he would always say what a huge fan he was of hockey and how glad he was to have this hockey player as his friend. The good times never seemed to end until they did. One day, the rich guy tells his hockey player friend that he needs a bridge loan of $45 million, but only for a month or so, and then he'll pay the whole thing back with interest. This was just to carry him through until the following month. Now, that $45 million loan amount was really interesting because just a year earlier, the hockey player had told him that his entire cash holdings amounted to $45.5 million for all the years of him saving his hockey salary. So the hockey player, who knew this good friend for 12 years and saw how rich he was all those years, how many homes and estates he had, he decided to loan him $45 million. He cleaned out almost all of his bank account and wired him the money. The next week, he calls him just to see how he's doing, and the rich guy's phone number is disconnected. The guy is nowhere to be found. So the retired hockey player hires a private investigator, and it turns out the rich guy has fled back to Lebanon with all the money. Apparently, the guy's business tanked, and he needed the hockey player's money to start his new life. The reason he fled back to Lebanon is because Lebanon doesn't permit the extradition of Lebanese citizens to foreign states. That's one advantage. The other advantage is that once you're back in Lebanon, it is very easy to purchase a new identity and start a new life. Once you change your identity, creditors or anyone else will find it extremely difficult to track you or the stolen money down. Now, I'm telling you this story because a lot of broke billionaires, millionaires, and middle class people are going to be trying to sell things for far more than they're worth in the very near future. They're going to be lying about their company financials to prospective buyers. Even now in Manhattan, prospective tenants and buyers are finding that landlords are constantly lying about the real square footage of the stores they are trying to rent or sell in Manhattan. They'll claim their storefront is really 3,000 square foot, but in reality, when the tenant measures it with a laser scanner, they see it's only 2,700 square feet. And this is happening constantly now. You're going to see more and more of this desperation deception going on in the marketplace, in real estate, in the sale of companies, and especially in the sale of high-end art. Right now, there are renowned art appraisers in New York and London who will no longer certify artwork as authentic because the techniques and technology being used by art forgers are now so sophisticated that they can't confirm the art is real anymore. We forecast that over the next couple of years, a lot of people out there are going to be offered all sorts of one-in-a-lifetime deals on real estate or assets of some sort that are being sold. My advice to you is to employ something called a forensic appraisal or a forensic audit. If you're being offered a company or business, then hire at least two separate forensic auditors to determine what that company and its books are really worth. Don't just hire a bookkeeper or an auditor. You have to hire a forensic auditor. If you're being offered other assets of some sort, then hire at least two forensic appraisers who will actually go in and check for deception and misrepresentation. And if someone wants to borrow money, then make sure the collateral they offer you is actually owned by them and that it hasn't been encumbered by liens or debts, or in fact already been sold to a dozen other people who all think they're the rightful owner. So with that in mind, I want to thank you for watching and ask that you subscribe to our channel because some of the stuff we're going to be revealing and disclosing in the near future is going to be amazing. Stay tuned.